And I think at this point, probably everybody's starting to hear quite a bit about Tennessee Promise. So I, in large part, want to have a conversation with you all about what's your perception of Tennessee Promise, what do you know, what do you not know at this point, and make sure that you leave here today with correct information about how you can use Tennessee Promise, where you can use it, what it can be applied to, and how it's applied. I work for the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation out of Nashville, and we are the organization, the state organization that administers and manages all of the state grants and scholarships, such as Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Hope. So, with that said, I'm relatively new, but learning a lot along the way, and hopefully I'll be able to answer all your questions. If I can't answer them today, I will be sure and get your contact information so that I can come back to you and answer those in a later date for you. So, Tennessee Promise is a last dollar scholarship that can be applied towards your tuition at community colleges, Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, and a select few eligible four-year public and private institutions. Okay? So we'll talk more about what does that really mean here in a moment. But to be eligible for Tennessee Promise, you have to be a Tennessee resident, graduate from a Tennessee high school, and then there are a number of application steps and program participation steps that you have to complete by deadlines in order to maintain your eligibility to receive Tennessee Promise. So that first deadline that's coming up, and what we were talking about earlier that we're going to do a little bit later this afternoon after we do the presentation, is to do the application. It's a simple application. You can go to TennesseePromise.gov to do that application. It takes you to the TSAC portal, which some of you, if you've done dual enrollment, you've gone through that portal before. You've already created a login. You're somewhat familiar with it. So we're going to help you do that application today, if at all possible, and if you've not already done it. So as of November 1st, that's the deadline for the application. Any student at that point in time who's not done the application is kind of ineligible for the program. So even though there's some multiple steps to maintain your eligibility, you want to make sure that you're doing all those steps until you have at least made your school choice and decided that I'm going to attend a school that is not eligible for Promise dollars. And then I would encourage all of you all to make sure that you maintain that eligibility all the way through the fall term when you actually begin your studies at an institution that's not eligible for Promise. Because things happen and we may have plans to do X, Y, Z, and something happens and our plans change. So you might as well maintain that eligibility until you actually start at possibly a 4-year that does not accept Tennessee Promise dollars. And that way, if you do need to use it, you'll maintain that eligibility to be able to use it. So part of the criteria for eligibility is a mentoring component and also a community service component. So in the Knoxville area and most of Upper East Tennessee, our partnering organization is Tennessee Achieves. And most everybody in Knoxville is familiar with Tennessee Achieves already because they really were founded in the Knoxville area and got started there first. So Tennessee Achieves, on November 2nd, will get a roster of every student that has applied for Tennessee Promise, and they will then begin to contact the students and set you up with a mentor. And dates for the meetings have already been established, so your school counselors should have those, and if not, they'll be getting those very soon. But you'll have those couple of meetings to go to, you'll be paired with a mentor, and then you'll do 8 hours of community service every semester. But this first semester, you have from January 1 until August 1, so you'll have spring and all summer to do 8 hours of community service, which really is not very much, and most students are already doing that type of community service anyway, so it's not a big add-on to what your regular schedule is like. So those are the things that you have to do to get and keep Tennessee Promise. But I want to talk a little bit about where you can use it and how it works, how it's applied, all right? So we have 3 different scenarios here of 3 different students. Student A is eligible for a federal Pell Grant based on family income, okay? They're also based on a Hope Scholarship based on their academic record, being the ACT score of 21 or higher, or a 3.0 or higher GPA, and that's an either or. You don't have to have both of those. It's an either or situation. So this particular student is going to get $5,730 to apply towards their tuition. So, with a rough estimate of tuition, an average based on community college and TCAT costs, we use $4,000, even though it might be a little less, it might be a little bit more, but it's kind of a good rough estimate across the state. So this particular student doesn't have any tuition left to pay. So their balance right now is zero. Student B, kind of the same situation, but did not qualify for a federal Pell Grant. So their Hope Scholarship is going to cover $1,500 per semester, which is annually $3,000. So in this scenario, their balance of tuition that's still due is $1,000. And then in scenario C, the student hasn't qualified for any Pell Grant, nor did they qualify for Hope Scholarship funding. So they have a $4,000 balance based on our estimate of what that college annual cost is going to be. So how Tennessee Promise then will be applied to each of these scenarios looks something like this. Student A had no balance of tuition due, so they get no Tennessee Promise dollars. They didn't need it, so they don't get it. Student B still had $1,000 due on their tuition, so Tennessee Promise comes in and it pays that $1,000. And so they have zero out of pocket. And then student C, with the $4,000 balance, still Tennessee Promise comes in, they pay the balance of tuition, the entire $4,000, and out of pocket cost for the student and their family is zero. Okay? Does that help you understand how Promise works, how it comes in to cover tuition a little bit? Yes?
Does the money come, like, I know that, like, it costs per semester. Does the money for it come in per semester?
Yes, it does.
Or does it come at the end?
It comes in per semester prior to, at about the same time as your enrollment. And what you'll do is you'll get a financial aid package, and that financial aid package, if you have met all the eligibility for Tennessee Promise, will include Tennessee Promise dollars. And that's a really good question to ask, because all of your community service, you'll have to do it every semester. And so the first term has to be done prior to August 1st before you enter the fall semester, that very first semester, fall 2015. And the reason that is, and that deadline of August 1st, is so that all of that community service and your meetings can be verified, so that your college of choice gets that information then from Tennessee Promise and from TSAC that says, yes, this student has completed all of the components and is eligible for Tennessee Promise. So then your money is applied to your tuition bill before you actually start the term, so you don't run into any problems as far as financial aid once the semester begins. So every semester you'll do it prior to the beginning of the next semester. Okay? And I'm glad you asked that question. Are there other questions along these lines that you're formulating right now that maybe need some clarification before we move on? Yes?
Okay, so I've heard that the Promise Scholarship replaced the Hope Scholarship. That's not true.
That's not true.
Okay.
So, like in A and B, that student is getting Hope Scholarship dollars. That money is going to be applied to their tuition first. What gets applied to tuition before Tennessee Promise, because Tennessee Promise is the last dollar, which means they'll pay what's left over after others have been applied. So what gets applied is your Pell Grant, which is federal money, your Hope Scholarship dollars if you have earned those, and any money that you may get from TSAA, which is a need-based supplemental scholarship from TSAC. Those are the only three things. So if you get a Kiwanis Club scholarship, or if you get a scholarship based on where your parents work, or you got a scholarship from your institution, those forms are not going to be applied to your tuition before Promise. So you'll be able to use those things for what's called indirect costs, and these are things like your books and your supplies and your meal plan and your room and board and things like that. So there's kind of two different sets of costs. There's tuition, and then there's indirect costs. And so Tennessee Promise can only be applied to tuition, but a lot of your other scholarships can be applied to the indirect costs, like your meal plan and your housing. Okay? Great questions. So that's kind of how that worked, and I want to just touch on some of the changes that we're seeing in Hope Scholarship right now, because we've changed the dollar amounts, and I don't know, you have some flyers that's provided for you from TSAC, and on the back of that flyer it has all the scholarships and grants that are supplied from TSAC. But there's been changes to the Hope Scholarship dollar amounts. Previously, it was $2,000 per semester, regardless of whether you attended a community college or a four-year college or university. That has shifted a little bit now. So at the community college, you're going to see $1,500 per semester, and at the four-year college or university, you're going to see, which is on the next slide, you're going to see $1,750 per semester, your freshman and sophomore year. Then, when you reach junior standing, and I'm going somewhere else with this, so hang with me. When you reach junior standing, then you are eligible for $2,250 per semester, provided that you've maintained that HOPE eligibility, which is based on your GPA in college. So, how many of you all are doing dual enrollment? Excellent. That's awesome. So, as a dual enrollment student, those credits that you're getting, those college credits that you're getting right now, they're going to be applied to your class standing when you begin college. So you may begin college as a second semester freshman, while everybody else is beginning college as a first semester freshman. If you have enough college credits, you may be starting as a sophomore. So what this means for you when you move to the four-year institution, or if you enter the four-year institution from day one, you're going to be a junior faster than everybody else. Okay? Because you already are taking those college credits with you. So when it comes to that junior standing, and the $2,250 that comes from HOPE based on junior standing, you're going to get there faster than other students are going to get there. And you're shortening, by doing dual enrollment, you're shortening the amount of time that you're in college in the first place, which means when you're talking dollars and cents, what it means is that you're into the workforce faster than everybody else in your class. So you get first dibs on the good jobs. So really, let's say that you start your first job out of college at $45,000 a year. Because you took dual enrollment and you earned a year's worth of college credits while you were in high school, you just added $45,000 into your lifetime earnings because you got done a year faster. And boy, that's, it's kind of hard to see that when you're where y'all are at. But down the road, you'll realize when you're graduating and you've got a job and everybody else is thinking, well, I got another couple, 3 semesters to go, then you'll really appreciate the work that you're doing right now to get ahead. So, kudos to you. So, what we really want to focus on right now is on Tennessee Promise is this timeline that we're under right now. November 1st is that application deadline. Please don't wait till November 1st. We're going to do it today, if at all possible, with a lot of you. Make sure that you get it done in the next week or two. As we get closer and closer to that deadline, I really believe that website's probably going to get a little bit harder and harder to get into. We did a major push on Saturday, so we got a lot of students in then, and we're seeing great results. I think we're up to somewhere like 20,000 students have applied. So just want to make sure that you don't wait till the last minute. It takes about 3 minutes to do the application. So then, have you all heard of the FAFSA application? Pretty familiar with that. That is your free application for federal student aid. It has to be completed by February 15th, okay? I'm sure that I'll be coming back at a later date and working with parents to make sure that they understand their role in completing the FAFSA because it does require parent guardian information as well. So we'll make sure that that is done and gets in by February 15th so you maintain that eligibility. Then you've got the mandatory meetings, which are already been established, and you'll be able to get those days in plenty of time to make sure that you're able to take off work, or that you're able to get transportation, or whatever arrangements you need to make to be sure that you can attend those mandatory meetings. There'll be 2 total, okay? You'll need to do that FAFSA verification if you're pulled for FAFSA, and if that happens to any of you all, please call me directly, okay, and work with your school counselors, and we'll make sure that you get through that process. And it's nothing difficult, but it is extra paperwork. It's just basically, you have to verify that the information that you sent digitally is accurate information, so you're going to have to make hard copies and send it into your financial aid office. But there is a deadline associated with that. It has to be done by August 1st in order for you to continue to be eligible for Tennessee Promise. And then your 8 hours of community service that we already talked about. And then you'll begin classes in the fall of 2015. Okay? Now, a couple of things that I want to touch on before we wrap up. If anybody in here are going to be graduating early, December graduate? Okay. All right, so we don't really need to go there. But there are There's not special rules, but a lot of people are thinking that if you're an early graduate, that you're not eligible for Tennessee Promise, and that's false. Early graduates are eligible for Tennessee Promise. Okay? And let's talk about where you can use Promise, because I don't want to sugarcoat any of that. You can use Tennessee Promise at community colleges. That's going to cover the first 2 years. You can also use it at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. Again, it'll cover your whole program at the TCATs. There are a few public and private 4-year universities and colleges that are eligible to accept Tennessee Promise Scholars. Okay? Public schools right now are Austin Peay and Tennessee State University. The private,
So you mean UT as of right here, not just UT is part of that?
no,
Oh.
they're not. Because they are a 4-year public school that does not offer an associate's degree program. So the way that would look, if you decide to use your Promise Scholars at an eligible 4-year institution, they would A, have to offer an associate's degree program, and B, they would have to, what was B? I can't remember what B was. You would have to enroll in that associate's degree program, okay? So Austin Peay does have some associate's degree programs, but let's say that you want to study biomedical technology, and Austin Peay's associate's program is in social work. I don't know if it is or not, but let's just use that as an example, because those are two very polarized fields, all right? So if you did the associate's degree in social work, and then you tried to transfer that into your bachelor's degree at Austin Peay in biomedical technology, you're really going to have to come back and take another whole year of classes to be ready for biomedical technology. So that's probably not a good match. But if Austin Peay offers an associate's degree in something that's closely related, or in a general studies application, that would be a good match for you to be able to then complete the associate's degree, and then completing the associate's degree using Tennessee Promise Scholars, and then you could be able to continue your studies on to do a bachelor's degree, not using Tennessee Promise Scholars, but you would be able to use the associate's degree to step into the bachelor's degree. Okay? That makes sense how that works? You transfer in. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was actually wondering, so there's this program they have with UT where you do 2 years of community colleges,
Yes.
Pellissippi,
Yes.
and then you go to
Dual admissions.
Yeah. So if I have it for Pellissippi, it'll work for Pellissippi.
Correct.
As soon as I transfer to UT, it won't.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Just getting clear.
And there's a couple of things called terminating events, okay? And the terminating event means that you are no longer eligible for Promise. So if you miss any of the deadlines or you miss any of the mentoring meetings, that's a terminating event. You're no longer eligible for Tennessee Promise. If you transfer to a 4-year school that's not a Tennessee Promise school, then you're not eligible for Tennessee Promise Scholars. If you get your associate's degree, or you're working towards an applied science degree, or you're working towards a certificate, and you achieve that degree, that's a terminating event.
So if you get a science degree, you're eligible?
No. Applied science is generally a 2-year degree. That's a very hands-on applied program.
So
So it's associates of applied science.
geology?
No, geology would be a regular associate's degree, and then you would move into a bachelor's degree to complete. And you know,
Do you have a list of
the schools.
I have over here at the table, there's a list of all the colleges that are available, and we have a list of all the dates as well.
Excellent.
Their meetings that you must attend.
Along with this question, do I need to go into a specific major in order for this to kick in?
You do not. If you're attending the community college, you'll be pursuing that associate's degree or a certificate. So either of those programs, any of those programs, are going to be eligible as long as you're pursuing one of those degrees. It's only if you're looking at one of the 4-year schools that you need to make sure that if it's an eligible institution that you are actually pursuing the associate's degree. Because Tennessee Promise will only pay up to the associate's degree. But then you can stay at that school and continue working towards a bachelor's degree after you complete the associate's. Okay? Is that helpful? Are there other questions, or is there any confusion that's come out of this that I maybe need to go back and clarify some things?
And if you've already signed, you've already read
that will be February 2nd at 8 a.m. And then one after that is April 6th at 8 a.m. Both of those, all those are in the space.
What was your question?
Is the college committee
Yes. Yes. Yeah, Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Hope can only be applied to a Tennessee school. Other questions? Yes.
This is kind of a question for the teacher.
Sure.
My normal bike, jeans hour at third lunch, so.
Let's get this out to round the clock.